Hey, welcome to my darkroom. You know, you should always hang on to your negatives. You should never get rid of anything, and I learned a really valuable lesson. When I was leaving Japan, I went through my negatives and I chucked out quite a few that I thought were useless. I've learned you should not do that because you never know what gem lingering within. I found this negative that I shot when I first came back to Canada. So it's around 2003. This is shot on HP5. It was developed in Pyrocat HD for stand development. This negative was made before I got into alt printing, so it was tailored for gelatin silver printing. The density range is about 1.50. I think it might be good for carbon. Well, HP5 is not a good choice for alt printing, mainly because a lot of the alt processes require a really long tonal scale, which means you need to really increase the development time to get there. You can do that, but sadly the shadow area build up a lot of density, preventing you from getting good blacks and good contrast. A lot of the alt processes are self-masking, so that really prevents you from getting a good black. Now I found when I got into alt printing, I did quite a bit of experimenting with HP5 to see if I could make it print in carbon. And I found that if I either decreased my exposure index or ISO to about 400 or even 800 and then use a non-conventional developer or high contrast developer such as D19 or DK50, I get a pretty decent negative. And I have printed successfully in carbon. I've also found that stand developed negatives or semi-stand can get me there too. Having that stain helps. You can see the shadow areas are pretty clear. There's lots of local contrast, which is pretty ideal for carbon printing, especially if you want relief. I think I'm going to take this negative, try and make a high relief carbon transfer print, and I think I'll take you guys along. I'm going to start by making the glop. I usually make small batches, so this one is going to be a 200 ml batch, and I always start off with 185 mils of cold tap water, 20 grams of gelatin, and this is just gelatin that I got from a bulk food store. It's about a 250 bloom, and you know, you can easily make carbon transfer prints with Knox gelatin. Done that in emergencies. There we go. I'm going to mix that up. Okay, that's good enough. Now I'm going to take it and stick it in the fridge for about 30 minutes so the gelatin can bloom. And then after that I'll warm it up again and I'll start adding the other ingredients. Just warmed it up in the microwave, being careful not to boil it because I heard that's no good. Now I'm going to add sugar. And that'll be 19 grams of sugar. Yes, I used a lot of sugar. Helps keep the gelatin, the tissue, pliable, not brittle. Facilitates absorption of water in the mating bath. Directly in. Here's the pigment that I use. It's just Cotman watercolor. It's a lab black. This is the what I originally used to use, and I stopped and I started using Daniel Smith's lab black, but I find that it just didn't have the Dmax like this does. This is really nice black, and the other bonus is this is much cheaper. .3, and I'll pour a little bit of hot glop and I'll mix them together in here. I don't know why I do it this way. Just the way I've always done it. Just find it's easier to control that blob of watercolor. As I was saying, I want to make a high relief carbon print, so that's why I'm using very little pigment. I'll add it to the glop and I'll mix that up. Time to filter the glop, and I just use a pair of Uniqlo underwear. No, I've never worn them. Nice and filtered. Now it's time to gas out the block and get all the air bubbles out. Now, some people put isopropyl alcohol in. I don't bother with that. I feel that the several hours that I give it to gas out is enough. Now there are some air bubbles on the top. I could just leave it, but I'm going to spritz it with some isopropyl alcohol just to get rid of them. Voila, all gone. Okay, so very hot water in here. I would say about 43, 40, maybe 45 Celsius. And I'm going to leave this in here for several hours. It's 9:30 in the morning, and I will come back in the early evening to make some tissue. And we're back. Okay, should all be gassed out by now. Okay, this is my pouring station. It's just a piece of galvanized metal I picked up from a hardware store, meant for venting, furnace venting. I'm going to adhere the tissue substrate, which is just UPO. I mean, these pieces of UPO I've had for over 10 years. So I'll adhere it to here, and I will mask off with these magnetic strips. Okay, this platform has been leveled. I've got these bolts here, and I use my level. I've already done that. Now I will adhere the UPO. It's really simple. And just squeegee it down. It's important that it is nice and tight against or on the surface here. Just wipe up any excess water. The negative is, it's 8 by 10 negative. I always like to have at least a half an inch of waste tissue going around it. Just make sure they're down. And I've measured out about 150 mils. If you ever get any bubbles, like I did right there, I'll just spritz it and it's gone. And I'll just go ahead and pour, spill it all over the place. And pour slowly, otherwise it'll spill over the magnetic strips. And then I just use my finger. In the early days I used a comb, but the teeth on the comb just came off. Little imperfections or bubbles, I just put my finger in it. And they usually go away. That looks good. Now I'm just going to let it sit and set. Okay. I just blow on it lightly, and if it doesn't ripple or just ripples a little bit, then it's time to remove. And to do that I use a skewer. And it does leak a little bit. That's okay. I can clean that up. With my squeegee. Now I will carefully remove it. Okay, it's not running, and I will hang it to dry. And I just use thumbtacks, as you can see, and then I'll turn the fan on. So there's a steady stream of air blowing onto the wet tissue. The reason why I do that is it really helps speed up the drying process. So when I come back to today after school. It should be dry and ready to sensitize. I'll see you guys then. Okay, the tissue is dry and I've got it taped down and I'm ready to sensitize it. What I'm using is ammonium dichromate. It's a 1% solution that I've diluted 1:1 with acetone. I use 5 mils of the dichromate and I dilute it with another 5 mils of the acetone for a total of 10 mils, and then I split it in half. So I coat twice, 5 mils each time. I'm wearing gloves because dichromate is a carcinogen. And I just pour it on like so. And the acetone, it evaporates quite quickly, so you have to work quick. You gotta brush it on quick. Now, if you notice, if you're brushing and you see black pigment coming out, you'll notice it on the edge. That usually means your tissue isn't completely dry. You gotta make sure it's completely dry. Okay, so as I was brushing, I felt a little resistance, so that's in. I will take the next 5 mils and I will add it. Notice I added it to the left side. It's probably not necessary. I just figure that's nice and even this way. Some people just pour it right in the middle. I don't know, I feel more comfortable doing it on the sides like that. And I'm using a high density, very fine foam brush. Don't buy those cheap ones from the dollar store. They're too coarse and they'll scratch the gelatin. There, that's in. And I just use these little makeup wipes I picked up from the dollar store just to clean the edge. And I don't throw these in the garbage. I soak them in my little vitamin C bath to neutralize the dichromate. And now I will hang this up. Oops. Okay, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the fan on again. So it has a nice steady stream of air blowing onto the tissue, and that'll help dry it. It usually takes around 2 hours for it to dry. So I'm going to go have a cup of coffee. See you guys in a bit. And while I'm waiting for the tissue to dry, I'm going to size the substrate, the paper that's going to receive the transfer. And I like to use this matte medium from my local art store, Opus. There's all sorts of different brands that you can pick up. This particular brand that I get. And I dilute this 1:1 with water. I use a high density foam roller brush. Paper that I'm using is Arches Platine. Yeah, it's a really expensive paper, but I was able to buy a box of very cheap platine because it was defective. So now I just keep rolling it out until this stippling effect is gone. Finished this first coat. I'll hang it up to dry. I give it about 15 minutes and then I apply another coat for a total of 4 coats. And I've got the negative already. I've got it taped down with lithographer's tape, and I've got it taped onto a piece of acetate so it'll lay down on the tissue this way. It'll be backwards. That's okay though, because when I go to do the transfer, it'll be the right way around. Okay, here's the dry tissue, And I'll just put the negative directly on top, and into the exposure unit it goes. That's a 40-minute exposure. Okay, we are now ready for the mating bath. This is just straight tap water. It's 15 degrees Celsius. So I'm going to put this in the mating bath and it'll sit undisturbed for 4 minutes. It's pretty cool. You can see the image, the latent image, and all the relief. Okay, with 15 seconds remaining, I will put the size paper into the mating bath and I will mate them. And I will squeegee them nice and tightly together. Put a little weight on it. And I'll get the developer bath ready. So next I'm going to get the developer bath ready, but I need to get rid of this water. Oops. Here's the vitamin C that I use, and 10 liters of water. I put in 2 heaping tablespoons. Now it's ready to discard. Okay, my development bath is ready. It is 45 degrees Celsius. These rocks here are to hold it down underneath the water, because sometimes it floats. So in we go. And I will wait 3 minutes. Okay, time to remove the tissue. Just pulling off nice and easily. I gotta clean this because I can reuse it. And I just agitate it. I'm going to change the water. And you know the print is cleared when you don't see any pigment running off. I still see some there, so it's got to stay in. Still a little bit running off. Change the water. Yeah, I think that's pretty good. And now I will give it a cold water bath just to set the gelatin. now I will hang it up to dry. And I'll come back and admire you when you're all dry.